I'm sure it felt pretty momentous to be in the same room as your investors once again and to be able to have this sort of discourse. And remind us, there's sort of unprecedented 9 new medicines that you're launching here. What was the reaction from the investor base?
Well, thanks for having me, first of all. It was great to be in the same room with investors and be able to discuss the progress we've made. We are launching 9 new medicines in a short period of time, which is really unprecedented for our company. The pipeline of Bristol Squibb has doubled, and we communicated the potential of those medicines. We see them at $10 to $13 billion in sales by 2025, with the potential to be over $25 billion in sales by 2029. So we're really confident that we have a number of growth opportunities and drivers to replace the products that are losing exclusivity and grow the company through the decade.
Part of the drivers, at least in the pharmaceutical space, that a lot of people look to are, of course, the success that has been seen so far with mRNA with regards to the development of the COVID vaccines. There are a lot of people that look at Bristol Myers and they want to know what's the plan, if at all, for mRNA in your pipeline.
Well, we have a very diversified pipeline across multiple platforms. The platforms we're investing in are really exciting. I'll give you 2 examples. One is protein homeostasis, completely different way of treating disease. We have 5 products in the clinics right now. And one of the most exciting areas is cellular therapy. And so one of our medicines, Breyanzi, we presented data actually where for some forms of lymphoma, it will change the standard of care, which had been established over 20 years ago. So these are just examples of the sort of diversification of our pipeline and the leadership we have in really exciting science areas.
That pipeline also important given some of the generics that are coming online, some increased competition. How are you looking at the threat of that, the deflationary forces of that, and I guess being able to navigate it?
Well, that's our business. We know that our role is to develop new medicines and renew our portfolio all the time. Our history as a company is one where multiple times in our past we've been really successful at renewing our portfolio. We know we have a number of losses of exclusivity coming, but the launch of new medicines, 9 new medicines in a short period of time, over 50 medicines in phase 1 and phase 2 early development. Again, we're really confident that the renewal of our portfolio is accelerating ahead of those losses of exclusivity, and we're very confident we'll continue to grow the company through that period.
You've grown the company organically, but also inorganically, making purchases, Celgene and the like. I'm interested as to how much M&A folds into that role of continuing to beef up the pipeline.
Well, we have tremendous financial flexibility, and so that enables us to look at innovation internally, of course, by funding research and development, but also externally with business development. That is one of our key pillars in terms of our strategy. And we look at 2 types of deals, in fact. Science-based early research collaborations are critical to our strategy. That's how we broaden our research platforms. We established over 85 collaborations in the last few years. But we also look at mid-size and small-size bolt-on acquisitions. We did that with Myocardia, which brought to us a really exciting medicine, mavacamten, that we're getting ready to launch at the beginning of next year. That will continue to be an integral part of our strategy.
And how much assurance can you give investors with regards to the supply, I guess basically keeping that pipeline, not just with the development of the drugs, but once they're made, getting them out there. We've seen some issues with some of the CAR T drugs. A lot of investors want to make sure that whatever is new coming down the pipeline is actually going to reach the end consumer.
Yeah, I mean, that's clearly a priority for us because we want to make sure that patients have access to our medicines. I must say that throughout the pandemic, we've been very successful. Our business continuity management has enabled us to continue to supply medicines around the world to our patients. It's critically important, and we pay a lot of attention to that.
Were there any issues with some of the input costs or input availability of some of the inputs that you needed for the manufacturer?
Well, of course, in our industry, a lot of manufacturing has been focused on vaccines, and there are some ingredients that are the same for other complex biologics, like the ones that we manufacture. So I'm really proud of our teams because throughout the pandemic, they've been able to overcome those obstacles and not only continue to supply medicines to patients, patients, but also keep sort of the R&D engine going, clinical trials continuing, because there are patients with cancer that are waiting for the next generation of therapies, and we definitely didn't want to slow down.
Romain talks a lot about the input costs on this show for the past few months, really been talking about the output costs, some of the inflationary pressures, passing those on to the consumers. Pre-COVID, there were a lot of discussions in the administration about drug pricing and trying to put pressure on healthcare companies and drug makers to make it more affordable, make it more accessible. Do you still see that as a real regulatory risk in a post-pandemic world?
Well, there clearly is discussion about healthcare reform in Washington right now, and there are elements that are concerning to us because, for example, the prospect that the government may set prices. We know in every country where that happens, innovation suffers. There are some of the reforms that are being discussed, like establishing, for example, a cap for out-of-pocket costs for seniors. The industry has been advocating for a long time. We're clearly very supportive, because it's all about making our medicines affordable to every patient.
Can you tell us whether you indeed are approaching Aurinia?
No, I won't comment on that.
One thing that you might comment on more specifically is we've had a lot of people worry about whether or not people have been able to get the treatment they needed during COVID. In particular, they talk about the secondary health crisis of people not having been able to treat the cancer that they had. Is that something you worry about? Do you feel that that's something that's being tackled?
We are concerned about that because when we look at the number of patients with cancer that go to healthcare centers in the US today, it's still 5 to 10% below where it was before the pandemic. So I think it's absolutely critical that we manage the flow of patients back into the healthcare system because we are worried about the consequences of that.